started with a dull ache in my lower back. I didn't think much of it at first. After all, I'd been helping my sister move into her new apartment in downtown Chicago. Carrying boxes up and down stairs on a hot July afternoon? Yeah, some soreness was expected. But this wasn't ordinary soreness. The ache grew sharper over the next few days. It spread into my right hip and down my leg. By the end of the week, I couldn't stand for more than 5 minutes without feeling like my bones were grinding against each other. Maybe you pulled a muscle, my mom offered over the phone, ever the optimist. I wanted to believe that, but deep down, I knew this was something else. Something worse that I made my first doctor's appointment a week later, sitting anxiously in the waiting room of a local clinic. The physician, a man in his late 40s with tired eyes, barely glanced at me before asking, "Have you been staying active?" "I've been trying," I answered, squirming in the stiff chair. "But the pain is getting worse and well, with your weight," he interrupted, scanning my chart. "Aches and pains are going to happen. It's just part of carrying extra pounds. You really should consider a structured weight loss program." I blinked. Did he hear what I said? Did he even listen? "I'm in too much pain to walk right now," I told him. "I've gained weight recently because I can't move like I used to. This pain is stopping me from living normally." He shrugged, handing me a pamphlet about bariatric surgery and told me to come back in 6 months if things didn't improve. That was it.
No scans. No referrals.
No blood work. Just judgment. I left the office in tears. I felt humiliated, like somehow my size meant I no longer deserved real medical care. That I'd done this to myself and now I should suffer in silence until I shrank down into someone more treatable. The pain got worse. By the end of August, I was using a cane to get around my apartment. I'd stopped going to work, too embarrassed and too exhausted. My job as a graphic designer was remote, thankfully, but even sitting at my desk became excruciating. I was 32, single, and felt like I was aging. And fast forward, I went to another doctor. This time a woman. I had high hopes. Maybe she'd listen. Maybe she'd understand. But after explaining my symptoms again, she too circled back to my BMI. "You're severely obese," she said, her voice clinical. "That puts pressure on your joints, especially your spine and hips. This kind of pain is typical. What about nerve damage? Or a herniated disc? Can I get an MRI?" She shook her head. "Let's try physical therapy and weight loss first. If that doesn't help in a few months, then maybe." A few months. I left that appointment with a referral to a physical therapist and another dietitian. The pain in my leg now came with numbness and a pins and needles sensation that wouldn't go away. Every step was a reminder that something inside me was breaking down, and no one seemed to care. Not unless I was thin. By the time fall rolled in, I couldn't make it down the stairs without holding onto the railing like my life depended on it. Because it did. One wrong step and I could fall. My leg had started giving out randomly without warning. The numbness was spreading. The physical therapist was kind but cautious. He worked with me gently, but I could see it in his eyes. He was worried. "You might need imaging," he said during our 4th session. "I'm seeing weakness that doesn't quite make sense. I'm going to write a note recommending an MRI." I felt a flicker of hope. I took that note back to my primary care physician, a new one this time, Dr. Ahmed, a young internist who had just moved from New York. He seemed different, more curious, more alert. I told myself not to get too hopeful, but I showed him the note anyway. He read it, then looked up at me. "How long have you been experiencing this?" he asked. "Over 3 months," I said. "It started as pain. Now it's pain, numbness, weakness, and constant tingling in my leg. I can't work full-time anymore. I barely leave the house." To my relief, he nodded slowly. "This sounds like sciatica, but possibly with something more involved, maybe a disc pressing on the nerve root. You need an MRI." My heart raced. Finally, someone who wasn't blaming it all on my weight. "Thank you," I whispered. He ordered the scan. but the insurance company said no. Denied. Their reason? I hadn't completed 6 months of conservative treatment, diet, exercise, physical therapy. They wanted me to wait longer. I wanted to scream. Doctor Ahmed appealed the decision. It was denied again. He fought for weeks, but every time we tried, the answer came back, weight-related. Try lifestyle modifications first. Meanwhile, I was barely eating, barely sleeping. The pain radiated down to my foot now, and I'd lost 20 pounds. Not from dieting, but from pure agony and stress. My hair was falling out. I was depressed. I was scared. One morning in November, I collapsed in the bathroom. I had just stepped out of the shower when my right leg gave out entirely. I hit the tile floor hard, my head narrowly missing the counter. I lay there for what felt like hours, naked and shivering, until I finally reached my phone and called my sister, crying. She drove over, took one look at me and said, "We're going to the ER. Now." The emergency room was packed. They wheeled me in and did what they always do. Took my weight, my vitals, and then made me wait. I sat in that wheelchair for 3 hours before a doctor finally came to see me. I explained everything. The fall, the numbness, the weakness, the months of pain. I even told him I couldn't feel my foot properly anymore. He looked at my chart, asked a few questions, then said the words I'll never forget. "Well, we can't really do much here. If this is related to your weight or a chronic condition, you'll need to follow up with your PCP. Emergency rooms aren't weight management centers." "I'm losing function in my leg," I said, tears welling in my eyes. "Please, just a scan, an X-ray, something." He gave me a look like I was overreacting. "We'll give you some anti-inflammatories and muscle relaxers. That should help." I wanted to disappear. I took the pills home, cried myself to sleep. For weeks, I didn't leave my bed except to use the bathroom. My leg was dead weight, my spirit even heavier. And still no answers. Until one day, I met someone who would change everything. It was my sister's friend, Marissa, who first mentioned Dr. Reyes. We were sitting in my apartment in silence. Well, I was on the couch, legs propped up with pillows, wrapped in layers even though I was sweating. I hadn't bathed in 3 days. I couldn't lift my leg without wincing. "I told Marissa what's been going on," my sister said gently. "She works at the university hospital. She knows a neurosurgeon, says he's amazing, compassionate, willing to see people that others write off." I didn't say anything. I'd stopped believing in miracles. But then my sister handed me her phone, where she had Dr. Reyes's number pulled up. "Please," she said, "just call." I stared at it for a long time before dialing. The receptionist was polite, almost too polite. I expected to be told that Dr. Reyes was booked for months or only saw surgical candidates. But she said, "Let me check something. We just had a cancellation for Thursday morning. Can you come in?" It was Tuesday. I felt my breath hitch in my throat. Yes, I'll be there." My sister took the day off work to drive me. When we arrived at the medical building, I was surprised. Everything felt newer, more polished, but not cold. I was expecting the usual. Quick glances, side eyes, awkward silences about my weight. But the nurse who took my vitals looked me in the eye. She didn't mention the scale. She didn't sigh. She just said, "Dr. Reyes will be in shortly. He's great." I didn't believe her. Not fully. But then he walked in. He was younger than I expected. Mid-40s maybe, with glasses perched on the bridge of his nose and a calm demeanor that felt immediately different. He introduced himself, sat down, and didn't even open the chart for the first few minutes. Instead, he looked directly at me. "Tell me everything," he said. "Start wherever you want." So I did. I told him about the pain, the numbness, the leg giving out, the multiple doctors who blamed it on my weight, the physical therapist's note, the emergency room that dismissed me, the MRI I never got. He nodded, taking notes, asking questions, listening. When I finished, I braced myself for the usual. Another speech about BMI, another referral to a dietitian. But instead, he said, I'm sorry you've had to go through that. It sounds like no one's really taken this seriously. I blinked, startled.
No.
They haven't. This is more than just weight-related discomfort. You've got red flags, neurological symptoms, loss of function. We need imaging immediately, not next month. Now. Within an hour, I was wheeled into the MRI room. It was cold, loud, and terrifying. But for the first time, I didn't care, because someone finally believed me. When the results came in that afternoon, Dr. Reyes called me himself. You have a large herniated disc, he said. It's compressing your sciatic nerve, and there's spinal stenosis too. That's why you're losing feeling in your leg. This isn't about weight. This is real. This is serious. I cried. Not because I had a diagnosis, but because I was finally seen. He explained the treatment options. We could try injections first, but honestly, you're well past the conservative stage. I recommend surgery soon. The longer that nerve is compressed, the higher the risk of permanent damage. He didn't blame me. He didn't shame me. He just helped me. I remember hanging up the phone and sobbing so hard my sister rushed into the room thinking something was wrong. Something was wrong. But now, someone was going to fix it. The surgery was scheduled for 2 weeks later. Dr. Reyes explained everything carefully. How he would remove the herniated portion of the disc, decompress the nerve, and possibly relieve some of the spinal stenosis that was causing the constant nerve pain. He reassured me that the risks were minimal, especially given how much worse my condition had gotten. But even then, I could feel a twinge of fear deep in my gut. 2 weeks felt like an eternity. During that time, I did everything Dr. Reyes suggested. I followed up with physical therapy, even though the pain was unbearable, and I got my strength back little by little. I was trying to prepare myself for a future without constant pain. I prayed that the surgery would work. The night before my surgery, I lay awake in bed, my thoughts racing. I thought of the months of suffering, the months of being ignored by doctors, dismissed by nurses, judged by the world. It was as though the weight I carried had not only made me physically heavy, but emotionally and mentally burdened as well. The morning of the surgery arrived, and I was terrified. Sitting in the pre-op room, wearing a hospital gown and receiving in 4, I couldn't help but wonder what would have happened if I hadn't found Dr. Reyes. What if I had listened to the doctors who told me to wait? What if I had kept pushing through, convinced that my weight was the sole cause of everything? As I lay on the operating table, I found myself whispering, "Please fix me. Please give me my life back." The surgery was a success. When I woke up in recovery, I felt groggy, disoriented. But when I shifted my legs slightly to adjust, something amazing happened. I didn't feel the usual stabbing pain. There was no sharp, electric shock running through my leg. There was no numbness. It was the first time in months that I felt relief. Dr. Reyes came to visit me after the surgery, smiling. "How are you feeling?" I don't feel the pain anymore," I whispered, incredulous. "It's gone." He nodded. "That's what we expected. The nerve will need some time to heal, but this should give you a huge amount of relief. I'm confident you'll make a full recovery, but we'll take it step by step." I started physical therapy almost immediately. I worked hard, I pushed myself, this time with the guidance of someone who believed in me. Every step was a victory. Every moment of healing felt like a triumph. But the journey didn't end there. As the weeks passed, I began to process what had happened. I thought about the years I'd spent feeling invisible to the medical community, about the way doctors had dismissed me, ignored my pain, and assumed that my weight was the root of all my problems. I realized how many people were probably still out there, suffering in silence, their conditions misunderstood because of the same biased assumptions I had faced. It was time to share my story, to speak up, to make sure no one else went through what I did. 6 months after my surgery, I was a different person. I was walking again without a cane, doing yoga, and even going back to work part-time. The pain that had once dominated my life was a distant memory, and I felt like I had my body back. I was slowly learning to trust it again, to remember that I had strength within me. But the healing wasn't just physical. It was emotional. Too that I decided to speak out. One rainy afternoon. I sat down in front of my computer, my fingers hovering over the keyboard. I opened a blank document and typed, "Doctors ignored my pain because of my weight." I had no idea where to start, but I knew I had to tell my story. That I poured out everything. The months of struggle, the dismissals, the pain, the desperation, and the frustration. I shared the real cost of living with a condition that wasn't just about being overweight, but about being made to feel invisible. To feel like my pain didn't matter because of the number on the scale. I talked about the relief I felt when I found a doctor who actually listened, who believed in me, and who treated me with dignity. When I finished the article, I posted it on my blog. I shared it on social media, in support groups, and with my friends and family. I didn't know how it would be received, but I knew I had to do it, for myself and for everyone who had ever been told that their pain didn't matter. The response was overwhelming. People from all over the country reached out to me, sharing their own stories of being ignored, belittled, and treated as less than because of their weight. They thanked me for speaking out, for breaking the silence. It felt like a small victory, a way to take control back over my narrative. But it didn't end there. A few months later, I received a message from a local medical advocacy group. They had read my story and wanted to feature me in an upcoming campaign about bias in healthcare. They wanted to highlight how assumptions about weight could cloud medical judgment and how vital it was for doctors to look beyond the scale and truly listen to their patients. I agreed. If sharing my story could change even one person's experience in a doctor's office, it was worth it. And as I stood in front of the cameras, sharing my experience with a group of doctors, nurses, and medical professionals, I realized something. I had not only found my voice, I had helped others find theirs too. I didn't just want to heal. I wanted to ensure that others didn't have to fight as hard as I did. I wanted to raise awareness about weight bias in the medical field, to make sure that every patient, no matter their size, was treated with respect and dignity. I wanted to help change the system. It wasn't just about me anymore. It was about every person who had ever been dismissed, ignored, or told that their pain was their fault because of their weight. I had been a victim of the system, but now I was going to fight to make it better. And with that, my life began to change. It wasn't easy, and I still have moments where the scars from my past creep in. But I know now that I am stronger than I ever imagined, and that my pain, my struggle, was not a reflection of my worth, my value, or my humanity. I am worthy of care. I am worthy of healing, and so are all of us.